Hello, I'm Adam and welcome to the garden. And in our video today, we're going to concentrate on weeding techniques and some of the things that we should consider when weeding in the garden. There are three things we need to consider when weeding in the garden. Firstly, recognising the weeds and where they grow. Secondly, some techniques on how we can go about weeding the garden. And lastly, how we can control and prevent weeds from growing in our garden in the first place. So how do we recognise weeds in the garden? Well, weeds, simply put, are plants that we did not intend to be growing in a space where we're growing other plants. For example, you could have wildflowers or any kinds of plants in the garden that are self-sown and become weeds. So as you can see here in this bed, I've planted 2 rows of kohlrabi. However, around the kohlrabi, there are little shoots and green plants growing. Now these, for all purposes, are weeds because I did not intend for them to be in this bed. It's important to remove them from the bed because they will compete with the plants in the bed that's ready here for nutrients and sunlight, and that then will hamper the growth of the intended plants in the border. There are many different techniques we can use when weeding in the garden, but one of my favourite and most simple is to simply just pull up the weeds themselves by hand. Try to do this on a day where the soil is moist, for it's far easier to remove the roots. Using a garden hoe on hot and sunny days is also a good technique, as this kills the weeds as you deroot them, just as I was doing here back in February. One of my favourite tools to use when weeding the garden is this little handheld hoe. It's fantastic just for getting to the little nooks and crannies around the garden that are difficult to reach with larger tools. I like using this especially in the flower beds and around delicate plants. It's inevitable that weeding will always be a part of gardening, but there are some things we can do in the garden to reduce the amount of weeds that grow. This year, for example, I've been experimenting using a wool mulch. Now, by placing wool around the kale plants here in this bed, I've been able to eliminate the amount of light that reaches the soil, which obviously is very important for the weed seeds to germinate. Therefore, if you use, for example, cardboard, paper, hay, any material to create a layer on top of the soil, you can reduce the amount of weeding that you need to do by a substantial amount, and also ensure that your crops or your plants grow to the best of their ability because they don't have to compete with any surrounding weeds for light and nutrients. Well, that's me weeded for the day. I hope that I've shown you some of the techniques that I use in the garden to reduce the amount of weeds. One quick tip I'd like to emphasise just before we finish is to weed little and often. So if you're going up the garden for a quick stroll, pull some weeds along the way. I hope that you have an opportunity to go out and enjoy your garden over the coming weeks. Tan y tro nesa, hwyl am y tro.